Heather, and I work for World Fisheries Trust. I am the research coordinator there, so essentially I wrangle all of the early career scientists and manage all of our research projects. The thing I love most is just the diversity of the work that we do. And it's a nice mix of research and stewardship. So, like last year, for instance, we did our first in-stream restoration project with Peninsula Streams, and it was really satisfying seeing a bunch of coho fry and cutthroat fry there. and then for the Olympia Oysters, we're doing some interesting stuff this year with planting eelgrass to see if that helps clear off the oyster reefs that we have up in Portage Inlet. So Olympia oysters are our only native species of oyster here on the west coast of Canada, and they used to be all over, but due to overharvesting and introduced species like Pacific oysters, they're only found in little pockets now. They're a very important species to ecosystem health because they help clean the water. They filter out sediments and help aggregate them on the bottom, where they then get trapped in things like eelgrass. So the gorge actually has about 80% of Victoria's eelgrass. So cutthroat trout, we used to be renowned in the gorge waterway for our cutthroat trout. They were large, they were numerous, but unfortunately we don't see those numbers anymore, and the fish are a lot smaller. So part of the work that we're doing is to figure out how many there actually are in these systems, and try to track their progress and eventually make more of them through restoration work. They're a really important keystone species because they spend a lot more time in the system than other salmonids like coho. So they're a really good indicator of stream health. If there's lots of them, you have a healthy stream with, lots of benthic invertebrates and good water quality, but if there's not that many, then you've got some problems. World Fisheries Trust has been monitoring the Olympia oyster population in the gorge waterway since the early 2000s, and some of our big projects on there have included salvaging Olympia oysters from the old Craigflower Bridge that needed to be replaced in 2013, and moving them to artificial reefs that were created by World Fisheries Trust. And we've been monitoring those every year since. And one of the interesting findings we had this year was in prior years, the reefs were sedimented out. So they just got covered in sediment very quickly. But last year, when we surveyed the Nature House reef, it was pretty much entirely clear of sediment. And the only change was that eelgrass had started growing around the perimeter of the reef. We think that the eelgrass helped to clear out all of that sediment, probably just by, locking more sediment into their roots, but also the change in current that they produce. And we're trying to recreate that this year. So we just partnered with Sea Change to plant some eelgrass around some of the reefs up in Portage Inlet that are still sedimented out, and using a brand new method, so attaching them to Pacific oyster shells with a hole drilled in them, as opposed to traditional methods which usually are attaching them to washers using twist ties or to rebar. So our ultimate goal, I think, now is we're kind of stepping a little bit into the stewardship world now. Our goals there are really to increase the number of Olympia oysters and the number of populations of Olympia oysters. So in the next couple of years, we're hoping to start reintroducing Olympia oysters to some of their traditional habitats. So one of the locations that we're looking at is Esquimalt Lagoon, and another is Esquimalt Harbor. They're traditionally found in both of those places. In terms of cutthroat trout, again, it's really just, trying to increase the amount of habitat available to them, and therefore increase the number of cutthroat trout. And even coho, like the work that we do to steward cutthroat also benefits coho. I took the environmental technology program at ComoSen after much internal debate on what direction I wanted to go in. So out of high school, I was actually considering being a police officer. And then I wasn't really sure, so I took a bunch of random courses at Camosun. And I really enjoyed them all, but ultimately I decided my love for nature is kind of what I wanted to focus on. So went for the environmental technology program because I had a friend that was taking it at the time. It was an amazing program, very hands-on. So you get a lot of very practical skills and a very broad skill set. So I did everything from forestry to limnology to surveying techniques, amphibian surveys, plant ecology, all over the board. And I really enjoyed it. So from there, I ended up taking 2 co-op terms with World Fisheries Trust, and that's how I ended up where I am today. I would say my advice would be to take those co-ops, especially if you're in a program where you don't get those hands-on skills. It makes a big difference. It opens up a lot more jobs for you because a lot of people that are hiring are looking for a pretty diverse skill set and lots of hands-on skills. Mm-hmm. So if you don't have that, you're going to struggle. Mm-hmm. One of the other things that I would recommend doing is just working on your skill set as much as possible. Get as many certifications as you can get. If you're interested in doing anything with fish, that electrofishing certification is going to make you shine like a star in the eyes of employers because they don't have to spend the money to get you trained up on that. And I mean, I've done all sorts of things. I've got my pleasure craft operator's license that allows me to drive a boat. I've gone to conferences, which are an amazing way to learn, amazing way to network. And networking events are worth it. So if you see one pop up and there's people there that you're interested in working with, go to it. And, be prepared. I brought copies of my resume, and I brought little cards that just highlighted who I was, my contact info, and kind of the highlights of my skills. And just in a little business card, it doesn't have to be a lot, just enough that people can look at it and be like, oh yeah, I remember that person. They can put a name to the face, and it paid off for me. I did end up making a contact with the DFO. So yeah, they're worth it. One of the things that I was kind of surprised about was I actually didn't see myself working for a nonprofit. I was going for that government job. But I would say that working for a nonprofit has been phenomenal. Just with the diverse amount of stuff I work on, I've gained so much experience here. One of the things I probably hadn't even considered was, grant writing and proposals and doing the reporting for that. But once you get into the swing of it, all that stuff's pretty easy. So when I was in high school, I had no idea I was going to go into this field. Like I said a little earlier, I really thought I was going to be a police officer. I didn't really consider anything else. So I didn't take the courses that I should have taken, like chemistry, physics. I had taken biology, thank goodness. But I did have to do a little bit of upgrading. So I ended up taking about a year off to do my upgrading after I did my little stint of random courses at Camosun to figure out what direction I wanted to go in. If you're even considering going into this field, make sure you hit that chem.